Hey there, you're listening to the EmpowerTech Podcast with Ijari Savalos. This podcast is where we discuss all things tech and explore the growing ways in how we can leverage technology to lead smart, sustainable, and impactful lives. Paul Woods has worked, researched, and led at the intersection of technology, people, and organisations. His research spanning sociology and tech at the Queensland University of Technology was the genesis for founding Adopt and Embrace in 2015, a multi-award-winning advisory and consulting firm focused on guiding leaders to apply collaborative technologies. Since then, Paul's books have sold over 10,000 copies worldwide, and he has spoken on stages across Australia, the US, Canada, Singapore, and Denmark. In this episode, we get into the focus of his latest book. How can we create human-centric, AI-empowered organisations and the value that that can create? Hi, Paul. I'm really excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for the offer.
Look, I'm really excited to talk to you about some of the things that you're on with. And on that point, I know that you're writing a book right now. So I was really curious to understand about this human-centered organisations book that you're writing and the power that that can create. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, happy to. I think where this is coming from is over the last 20 years of my career, I've seen technologists get this wrong time and time and time and time again when they've introduced new ways of working or new ways of doing things and things like that. And every single time it's this, and I'm generalizing here, obviously, but there's this lack of care for anything that is unrelated to the technology itself. So if we're introducing new technology, let's say it's collaboration technology or it's, video conferencing or, these technologies which on paper, deterministically should make us more productive, more effective, more efficient in the way that we do things, 9 times out of 10, they don't actually realize those results that you see, that you expected in the business case right up front. And if we kind of dig back through history, there's lessons to be learned over the last 100 years of how we've introduced technology into organizations, and we've always had this technology first approach, and almost always it fails. So I guess the genesis of the book is really try to reframe this conversation away from we have a bright new shiny technology, we need to introduce it into our organization to be more effective, to a conversation more around, well, how do we amplify the impact of our people? How do we deliver better outcomes for our customers? How do we do that with technology? And that's the whole point of this book, is to try and reframe this conversation to be more grounded in the things that really matter, which is how do we create a great employee experience? How do we amplify our biggest investment in most organizations, which is our investment in people, using technology to do that?
Wow, that's big. I mean, it's pretty difficult, even with the best of intentions, to get that right on most projects. What in this journey that you're on with writing this book have you sort of started to pull threads through from how we've done things in the past?
Yeah, there's a few classic case studies that I can talk about, but I won't bore you with all the details on them. Because if you're a sociologist or into anything like socio-technical systems, this could be a rabbit hole we go down to for days. Okay. Actually. But I think if we think about our own personal experience, let's start with that inside in an organization. And we've all worked in organizations where we've had a new system thrown at us that we've needed to adopt or needed to embrace in the way that we work. Could be an ERP system, could be a payroll system, could be a technology that's supposed to improve our processes and things like that. At that individual level, we know that some people really embrace that change and really interested in that change and get on board with it. And you could use classic descriptors like early adopters and things like that. People that genuinely curious, explore that stuff, are happy.
So get excited about new things.
Excited, comfortable with ambiguity and the unknown and kind of looking into that. From a vast majority, people don't fall into that category, though. And they're the ones that almost feel like a victim of the technology when it comes into their workplace, because it's disrupting their flow, disrupting the way they do things, disrupting the way that their team has worked together, or other things like that, right? And that's kind of a common thread you see across a lot of the technology introductions across time, is that again, on paper, technology should be great, but the reality is, for the lived experience of people on the ground, is it's pretty disruptive and kind of breaks things apart in terms of how things have been done. Now, there's ways that we have tried to, over the years, combat that, and if I use inverted commas, change management in varying degrees of form, some good, some not so good, some very much just ticking the box to say that we've done some change management to people as opposed to with people or for people. And I think that the challenge that we have there is that we all have the best intentions when we try and engage in these projects to get the best outcomes, but the execution of how we do that generally falls flat. And when push comes to shove, the focus will be on the structural, technical, tangible thing that we can introduce and say, yes, we've delivered something. And the focus shifts away from the softer, intangible, probably more important thing, which is how do we actually connect people and the work they do and the value they generate to this amplifying technology or this great information source or whatever it is that we're bringing into the organization itself. And that is ultimately the challenge. And that's a perennial challenge for all those things over time. And I think moving forward is the challenge when we come to the introduction of AI as well, which is kind of the trigger for writing this book as well, is that, again, we have a great technology on paper. The potential of, I think we all agree, or most of us agree, that the potential on paper of artificial intelligence technologies, whether it's the generative AI side of things or the, I say more traditional machine learning side of things and different flavors of AI along the way, we think I think we can all agree that the potential is huge. Will there be downside impact of that? Absolutely. And we need to manage that. And that's something we can work through as we go. But the capacity of organizations to embrace that potential is what is lacking. And do we have the resources? Do we have the mindset? Do we have the culture? Do we have the right foundations in place as an organization to rethink how we do things and apply this technology in meaningful ways to deliver better outcomes for our people, better outcomes for our customers, and things like that. Yeah. And I guess the key, going back to your point, the question, I guess, what is the thread I'm pulling is, like, how do we raise that capability of organizations to embrace that change, to get closer to the potential that technology can actually deliver, and translate that into results.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Sounds like some magical answers there, Paul. I'm just thinking about, typically what I'm seeing at the moment with AI is that we're sort of running pilots, trying to get familiar with how we do it safely, not breaching any privacy policies and data retention, and kind of slowly stepping into that space without really considering the culture we're bringing these things in, and potentially assuming that the learning will be organic.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of assumptions is probably the right way to think about this. Again, this is not just relating to AI; it's every technology. I think we have this assumption that people will just figure it out, and that the outcome will be amazing at the end of the day. Yeah, of course, because it's new, it's shiny. Why wouldn't you want to do this? So I think we have that challenge, and I guess the assumption of people will figure this out. Yeah.
One of the other things that I was thinking about is the concept of culture.
Yeah.
Sometimes we only really think about it as a problem that HR has to deal with. Like, culture is everything from how we organise ourselves, organisational structure, to how our leaders lead, to how we do things on the ground. This is how we do things around here. And that is a huge, I guess, consideration. And if we're plonking something in and expecting it to organically grow, there's a lot of layers in that.
Yeah, correct. And I think there's an assumption there, going back to your assumption word, that it's deterministic in nature. So we can say we need an AI first culture. We can say that, but the reality of actually creating something that's even close to that is a lot different from just saying we're going to do it and having a plan to get there, because it's a very complex system that you're trying to build, right?
Yes.
And there's lots of interrelatedness between different things, as you mentioned, structure, policy, what's written down versus what's actually practiced in an organization, the values of the organization versus the values of the people that you're hiring into the organization. All these different things have a role to play there.
So how should we be rethinking this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if we kind of frame it around the AI challenge in particular, I think it's thinking about this as a ongoing process as opposed to a once-off project. And if you think about AI adoption or creating a culture that embraces AI as a project, I think you will just hit your straps in that project just as you're about to make some impact, and then the project will wrap up. And then you'll go back to the status quo of what you were previously, and probably a little bit worse off because now you've got the complication of this additional technology without really significant change.
People don't really know how to use. Yeah, okay.
How to use, right? So you've got to think about it as a process, and I think it's an iterative process over time. And if I use the metaphor of a rising tide lifts all boats, is how do we have a process which continues to raise the tide in our organization of knowledge and awareness of how to apply this technology, raise a tide in terms of knowledge and awareness and capability of people to apply this technology in meaningful ways. And then how do we as an organization organize and structure and govern this technology implementation, or this technology that we're introducing into the way that we work. We need to think about it as how do we raise a tide for all those different boats kind of at the same time. And the mistakes that we're seeing at the moment, I think, based on my observation, and I'm happy to go into a very long debate about this one because I think this might be interesting. So organizations that lead with AI governance, for example, where they're setting the rules before they understand how the game is actually played, are going to shoot themselves in the foot, because they're going to miss out on so much upside and restrict so much of this learning and potential and exploration that is there before they actually see the results or the benefits of the technology in their organization and the shifts within their organization to do that. Organizations that are so fixated on getting their data right before they do AI, similar kind of thing. Yes, you can focus. I think it's noble and a wise thing to do to keep improving the way you manage your data and your data assets, because they're very valuable things in your organization. But the challenge is that your data is never going to be perfect. So when is the right time to say, yes, well, now we're ready for AI, now we're ready to do this process? I think we just need to assume that data is always going to be messy to some extent, and you need to kind of make the leap and then into that exploration and things like that. And I think there's a shift as you kind of raise this tide for all those different areas. There's a shift in where your focus is, right? So you start out very much in exploration mode, where you're trying to understand what's possible at an individual layer, understand what's possible at a team layer, understand what's possible at a process layer, so on and so forth. And then as you build that awareness over time, then you can start moving into exploiting that potential and turning it into value for your organization. And if I think about the practicality of that, is that if you're setting the rules and lots of stringent IT governance when you're still exploring, there's just going to be a complete mismatch between the exploration and the rules that you're setting, and no one's going to follow those rules, really embrace those rules. It's just going to be a piece of paper sitting in a folder in a SharePoint site somewhere. So it's getting this careful balance between the structural stuff, and which I'm not disregarding the importance of it, because I think it's very important, particularly from if you think from a risk point of view and other things like that. Very important things to have, but setting the rules without understanding the game that you're playing in the first place is going to be challenging for many organizations, and probably limit the upside and still not protect the downside that the intention was in the first place.
That sounds really challenging. I'm just imagining the types of different conversations that would be happening in an organization on, the different perspectives. The information security perspective, the executive or board perspective on the appetite for risk and how much to govern and how to kind of be comfortable with a level of adaptability in the process, if you like. And then, the user wanting to be able to use the technology in a way that feels of value quickly right? Because if it's what I find is if there isn't a quick value proposition for the user, you lose them quickly, right?
Yeah, you've got to understand the problem that you're solving. If you don't understand the problem that it's solving, then there's going to be no interest from anyone in the first place, right?
Do you think that we're getting closer to understanding where the value actually is? Because I do see that there is a bit of a shift in the questions that people are asking when new things are being introduced from a technology perspective.
Yeah, I think there's a deep conversation we can have around value and what is value and what does return on investment actually look like. And I think the obvious place that a lot of I guess those more financially minded folks would go is, are we saving money? And then as a second order thing, like, are we saving time? And they're kind of tangible-ish things that we can measure and say, hey, are we getting value out of this? And if you look at it purely through that lens, to answer your question about where the value is, I think at the individual level, the value is actually not as much as you think it is. So if you think about the use of, so this is generalization. If you think about the use of like Copilot within an organization, so Microsoft's offering, which is integrated into Office, is there upside there in terms of improving my the way I manage my workload during the day, or the classic example of like a Teams meeting where we've got Copilot doing the transcript and taking the actions and things like that. That's a really fantastic feature. And does it impact me as an individual? Absolutely. Does that save me time? Does it save me dollars? If you actually went and measured it, it probably doesn't really save us that much. What it does do is create space for me to do more work and potentially more overwork, because we're not changing the way that we've designed our jobs, or not changing the way we've designed the process around those jobs in particular.
Yes, I'm living this right now. Yeah. So, I mean, we haven't changed the process of taking minutes, for example. We've just switched on Copilot. So for people that haven't used it before, it just runs in the background, and at the end of the meeting, it does a little summary, and it can do what it calls taking follow-up tasks, which are kind of like the actions. But when we pull that information out, it isn't always accurate. So we still have to review it. We still have to look at it. We still have to spend time making sure it's correct before we issue it. So it's not a plug and play, but we certainly have not looked at how that all works and making anything more effective apart from switching it on.
Yeah, no, and I think I know this in your case, but I could probably say this for quite a lot of people. If we said, look, you're 8, 9, 10 hours, 7 hours, whatever, how many hours a day you do, has that shifted back 30 minutes to 6.5 hours or 7.5 hours? No, like no one's doing less work. They're just doing more work within the constraints of their day that they're doing, right? So that's the challenge is at an individual layer. Yes, we could say we're saving time. Is that translating into a return for us as an individual or a business? Negligible. Is it improving our employee experience, though? I used to hate taking minutes. I used to hate taking these things, and now I've got a way to outsource that to someone. So there is actually a benefit there, right? There is some value there, but in terms of how it makes me feel as an individual and that kind of thing, assuming that the accuracy is pretty good, which most of the time it's getting closer to being pretty accurate. So there's varying degrees of value there. So at the individual level, it's challenging to measure that stuff and do it well. Where I think the value is when you layer up to the team-based level. So you think about, as a team, how do we rethink how we work together as a team with AI as a team member? And what does that mean for the way that we interact as a group? What does that mean for the way that we deliver our value to our internal customers or external customers that we're working with? And how do we kind of start to operate as this human robot hybrid team? That's probably a really poor way of putting it, but like how do we have this robot team member within our team, and then how do we rethink how we do things? And I think as a team where you have information exchanges and communication flows and things like that, then there definitely is some value there in terms of improving the efficiency and effectiveness of those processes. And we see that with a lot of the generative AI tools, whether it's summarizing content or creating content, or that's consumed by other people within a group in a collaborative setting as well. So I think there's increasing value there, but the true value is not at the individual or the team layer level; it's at the process layer. So it's what are the processes within our organization that we can measure today, that we understand the throughput of, we understand how long they take, we understand the resources required to deliver this. They're almost always going across multiple teams, almost always crossing the organizational boundary between us and a customer, or us and a supplier, or us and a regulator, or whoever that is. That's where the real value is, I think. And in terms of tangible, game-changing value, if you want to put that in inverted commas, where you're going to see a significant shift in things. And like that's where a lot of the wins in AI have been over the last 20 years in that process space. You think of the very capital-intensive industries where they're doing things like predictive maintenance and other things like that, using machine learning to be able to predict when things are going to break down in a mine site or something like that. That's where the value has been for the longest time. And I think the value is going to continue to be there for the longest time. The shift that we're seeing now is that it's not just about blue collar work or automation of blue collar processes. Now there's potential here to automate or amplify or augment the white collar side of that equation as well. And that's the shift that's going to, I think, make the biggest impact. But then that's the shift that also requires people to be on that journey as well, to kind of make sure that we make that transition successful as well.
Okay. I want to go back to, I guess, some of the thoughts you have on how might things like organisational structures and leadership be impacted by that human-centered design of how we implement some of this technology.
There's a really great quote by a guy called Jerry Davis. He's a university over in Michigan. I think it's University of Michigan he's at. And it's the organizational science is now a subdiscipline of computer science. And the idea that the way that we structure our organizations used to be very much grounded in how we make decisions and how information needs to flow through organizations. And a leader or a manager had a certain span of control, which was essentially what is that decision sphere they have to operate in? And if it's more complex decisions, they probably have fewer people that report into them, or parts of the business report into them. If it's simpler decisions, they could kind of go a bit further out in terms of the span of control. But now we like an organization, if you think about it, is very much the people organization as well as the technical organization in parallel. And a lot of the processes are happening behind the scenes in technology black boxes. And we'll see this more and more as, we see things like AI agents start to enter organizations where they're doing the work of people that would traditionally sit in an organization chart, or they're making decisions based on people that would sit in an organization chart as well. So I think there's a lot of work to do here in terms of how we think about structures. And then the classic question would be like, where does an AI agent sit in an org chart? And who has accountability for the decisions that an agent makes? Which are really challenging questions to answer just with a few words, just spit out what it should look like. And ultimately, as someone coming into an organization, how do you understand how the organization actually works? An org chart or a accountability chart, however you want to describe it, would give someone an idea of how an organization kind of delivered its core purpose. We need to be able to think about how we reframe our thinking around org charts and structure to be able to embrace this new world of this socio-technical organization where we've got technical parts of the organization doing the work of what would be the human side of the organization as well in the past. And I think that's challenging. Is there an answer to it? I think there are answers to it. I think what we will see is that it'll be like a pendulum. It'll swing one way and go far too far, and then swing back the other way to kind of a nice equilibrium where it should be. So I think in the short term, what we will see is a rush towards, we think AI can make decisions, and we're going to assume that AI can make decisions on our behalf if we give it the right context and things like that, which means that in an environment where we want to keep costs low and increase revenues, we're going to cut out a middle layer of management in an organization. And we're starting to see that in some businesses already, where they're trying to cut out costs, and the generally the roles that are going are the ones that are in this middle management layer that are actually doing the glue that holds an organization together generally, but they're the first ones to go, and they'll make those changes, and they are making those changes, and then they'll go, oh my God, what have we done? Because now stuff is stuck and stuff is not happening like we wanted it to. And we assumed that the way that we set up these agents, that they would be making the right decisions to do that. And I think there's a good example of Klarna, which is a payments provider over in Europe, where they've gone through this process and they said, look, we're not going to hire people. We're going to let people go. We're going to replace our customer service 100% with AI agents. and they've gone through that process and they've definitely swung at the pendulum one way. Now they've come back right to the middle and said, actually, we were wrong. We still need humans involved in these processes. We still need that glue within our organization to tie these things together, to deal with the ambiguity that sometimes we can't predict, we can't anticipate, that will create great outcomes for our customers, great outcomes for our people, that kind of thing. So it's going to be this a few years of just trying to figure this out. I think there'll be organizations that definitely have that we need to reduce cost mindset, which every organization should have to some extent to control costs. But I think they're going to go too far. And this is where this idea of human-centered organizations, human-centered AI is really important, is that if you think that AI is going to be the thing that leads the way, you think that AI is going to do the work for you, you think that you need to be AI first, you're far more likely to make those mistakes and waste your time swinging that pendulum far too far in the wrong direction than where you need to be, which is probably a little bit more centered and balanced in terms of how you think about the role that AI plays and the role that your people play and your customers and your other stakeholders that you work with play and the value that you generate as an organization. And then as a leader, that's a whole heap of other complications in how do you lead that transition, which
I can just imagine how hard that's going to be. Paul, I assume that also, depending on the type of organisation and what their purpose is, will depend on what that balance needs to be.
Yeah, correct. And it'll vary depending on industry, and it'll vary depending on the stage of maturity of an organisation as well. I think organizations that are very clear about their processes and have that documented and understand how they generate value in a really detailed way probably have an advantage in terms of being able to improve the way they do things. On the flip side, organizations that don't have that documented and don't have a good picture of that probably have a really great opportunity to completely reimagine how they do things as well, because they're not stuck with the inertia or the status quo of the way things are as well. So I think every organization is going to kind of approach this and experience this in different ways based on the context of the external market they're in, but also the internal maturity of their business as well. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of go through. And again, as a leader, I guess the key thing would be how do you keep your head on straight? So think about it that way, without losing your mind, trying to navigate through this. And I think it's about being curious. I think it's about exploring and not just being in that exploit mindset all the time, but being in that exploring mindset as well, to kind of see how this can tie together. Ultimately, you and your team are the experts in the work that you do, and the IT team is not. Or the software vendor is not, or the AI vendor is not. So there is definitely value there as a leader and value there as a team to help guide this and make sure that it serves your internal customers the best, serves your organization the best, and ultimately serves yourselves the best as people within this. Because we need to be selfish to some extent in the way that we think about this. If AI is not making your life easier, then there's something wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
If it's making it more complicated, then we're maybe making the wrong bets in terms of where we're applying the technology.
And in terms of the things that you would be saying to leaders in terms of the skills that they should rely on or lean on in these conversations, what are the sorts of things that you think you'd be keen for them to be doing?
Yeah, I think ultimately there's core competencies of any great manager or any great leader that you should be fulfilling. So are you trustworthy, yes or no? Like if you're an untrustworthy leader, no one's going to follow you through a change of any significance with any kind of purpose behind you. So I think you need to embrace those traits of what makes a great leader already. But if we think about then how do we build that reputation for success as a digital leader? And I think this is the key thing that many leaders aren't comfortable with, or many leaders don't know where to start, is how do I start to build that reputation as a more digitally minded individual, digitally minded leader? And that is just about getting small wins. So what are the small wins you can do now in terms of embracing technology in your practice, in your leadership practice, management practice, how you lead your team, to then start to demonstrate that you can actually help get results for people by leveraging technology to do amazing things. And it could be as simple as, stop sending around your spreadsheets as attachments and emails and start using links, sharing links, so we can all collaborate on one version of the spreadsheet, which we should have been doing for the last 15 or 20 years. But people are still doing, not doing today, but even that's like, think about that as one small change you can make. right? You're on the journey towards being a more digitally minded leader because you understand the second order, third order effects of your actions, and you're applying technology to get a far better outcome for everyone in that scenario, right? Okay. So it's about how do we build that snowball effect of building that reputation. And then it is, working on how we apply existing technologies, or how do we embrace some of the new technology projects that are coming into our business, and how do we lead from the front with some visible leadership to show that we understand the impact of this technology, we understand the positive impacts, the potential consequences of it, and it looks like we understand that complete landscape and can guide our team or guide our organization through those different aspects. So I think if I summarize that, be a great manager, be a great leader, irrespective of the technology angle, but you need to start figuring out how to build that reputation for success with technology and be at the forefront of that within your organization. And that might take some time, but that's okay. We've got plenty of time. Like, these things might seem like they happen instantaneously to organizations, but the reality is I'm still talking about technology introduced 20 years ago that people still don't understand, that they can get great outcomes with. So, we have time. So don't feel like there's a fear of missing out. AI is not going away. There's going to be so much innovation that organizations just have zero chance of embracing. Yeah. Even a 15th or a 100th or a 1,000th of it over the next little while. So I think we've got time to think about it. You've got time to build up that momentum, to build up that reputation of being a great digital leader. And if you can do that, then you're going to have a lot more success in bringing your people on the journey towards this human-centered, AI-empowered organization that I think is the future.
And Paul, would it be fair that no question is a silly question from leaders at the moment in terms of getting familiar with what their organisations are implementing?
Yeah, correct. I think both internally, I think your IT team or your digital team would love for someone inside the business to come to them with a curious mindset to actually understand what they're doing, because I think sometimes they feel like they're the poor cousin to sales, or the poor cousin to operations, or the poor cousin to marketing, or even HR, like even competing within the internal service providers inside a business. They don't get much love. So going in and having a conversation with your CIO or your technology leadership team to understand exactly what they're trying to do, but at the same time helping them understand what you're trying to do as well, and make it it's a collaboration, not just you extracting information from. I think that's really valuable, and I don't know a technologist that wouldn't embrace that conversation.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to share what they're up to, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And that helps that creates opportunities, and it creates opportunities for getting early access to things. It creates opportunities to be able to learn with them. And I think outside of your organization, if you look at fast-moving innovation like we are with AI at the moment, no one really knows what's going on, because there's so much going on that there's not one person that has a grasp of every possible thing and every possible permutation of what's happening. Which means it's a great environment to be asking questions, and a great environment to be jumping in and learning, because everyone else is learning at the same time. So there's no need for imposter syndrome if you feel it, because you're not confident or comfortable with this. It's just starting with some of the easier stuff, and then kind of build up that foundation and kind of work your way through it. And because the only way that the industry is learning is by asking questions and having conversations. So, and the best way for you to learn is to be part of that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, even something as simple as, your Teams chat that most organisations are using now with their Microsoft suite, there's always features that are coming out and people are like, how does this work? And I don't get that. And even those simple things, the IT team in your business is always happy to answer questions.
Correct.
So that you can leverage the tools that you already have in a more effective way. So even the basics on that, right?
Yeah, correct. I think there's a mindset that many people have, which is maybe they don't take accountability or responsibility for their own personal learning in some spaces. So maybe if it's in a particular domain or subject matter expertise that they have, absolutely they're happy to invest time and effort in improving their knowledge and awareness and skills and competence and everything in that particular area. But when it comes to more horizontal skills or other softer skills that help them do their work, maybe they don't put as much effort into that. And I think sitting back and waiting for your IT team to run a training course or run a training workshop or running coaching, they're just as stretched as you, maybe even more. if they're seen as a cost in the business, which in a lot of businesses they are, the budgets aren't there to do what they really want to do. So they're scrapping together coins from behind the couch to put these things together, if they have the opportunity to do it at all. So if you and your team are sitting back waiting for IT to do this, that like in their heart they really want to do it, but sometimes their hands are tied by resources. So
such a good point.
So how do you take yourself and your team on this journey of self-discovery and self-learning and taking accountability for that? Having that conversation with IT absolutely will help with this because it'll guide you in the right direction. But then how do you equip your people with the right resources and conversations and discussions and debates and sharing of knowledge within your team, kind of building your own community of practice of how we do things using technology is a really, really powerful way to get through that. And then when you have the opportunity to take on structured learning or structured opportunities that might be available in your business, then you're far more prepared to make the most of it than if you're on the back foot starting from scratch.
Yes.
I think you can't wait for this to be delivered to you and handed to you on a platter. You really need to start going in with that open mindset, that curious mindset, that learning mindset, to think about how you're going to do things.
And look, some organisations are really good. They will provide avenues for you to get online learning for technology in general in those horizontals, as you mentioned, and that can be made available. But other organisations, as you say, don't necessarily have large funds for those sorts of approaches. And so what you might see, so what I thought of them as you were talking through it is that sometimes some teams do lunch and learns or a spotlight or sessions where you can sort of drop in that aren't mandatory, where they're trying to spruik their wares in terms of the work that they're doing. So that's other ways that IT teams try and provide some insight into what they're up to, because they do get excited about what they do. But definitely not seeing those, blanket training approaches that some people might be expecting.
Yeah, I think it's this mindset, and I think you described it really well there from the IT team perspective of working out loud. So, like making your work visible and making the problems you're solving visible and the way that you solve them visible to other people, so they can learn from that as well. Now, that applies to the IT team, but I think it also applies to your team and your own practices. How do I make the work that we're doing visible so that others can understand the context we're in, the problem that we're solving, the way that we solve it, how we're using technology to amplify that, accelerate that, improve the accuracy of that, those kinds of things. And that's definitely a great way to learn. And then the other way I'm thinking about is like we do this naturally. We're not even conscious of this as we do it. But it's much easier to learn when you're solving a problem in the moment, right? So normally when we find a roadblock, what's the first thing that we do? We open up a browser, we go to Google, how do I XYZ, hit enter, right? There's a YouTube video, there's 1,000 SEO-based articles that probably aren't very good, but you'll find one bit of gold, and it might be in the AI summary at the top anyways, that tells you exactly how to do things. I'll tell you a story, and this might be a good place to wrap up the conversation, but a very, very long time ago, I started a website called, and it's not there anymore, so you can't find this, but it was called the new Paperclip.
Okay.
And you remember Clippy in Word?
Yes, I do remember Clippy.
Yeah. So the inspiration was that, right? And all I did was write articles like with really, really simple things, like how do I undo in Word? How do I insert a table? How do I XYZ? And at one stage, that website had more readership than the Australian Women's Weekly or any of the larger magazines of the day. Magazines are dead now, but back then, people still used to read magazines. And it's because there is a need for people to be able to solve things in the moment. And how do I or why do I, those kinds of questions, that's the kind of content that can help you very quickly learn something and then embed it in the way that you do things, because it's in the context of the problem that you're trying to solve at the same time. And you're going to remember that a lot more than 50 ideas shot at you in a workshop over 2 hours, where there's a forgetting curve that you'll eventually forget that stuff over time. The stuff that you learn in the moment when you're trying to solve a real problem is the stuff that's going to stick with you for a lot longer. So I think there's taking that personal responsibility, being curious. I'm not just sitting back and going, well, I can't figure this out. It's taking that next step and going, well, I'm going to figure this out. And if you can do that, then that's probably the most basic competency or attribute that you need as a great digital leader, is just having that mindset of, I can figure this out.
If you have that confidence, what's coming.
Yeah, correct.
Well, it's been lovely talking to you, Paul. I really like some of the things that you're on with your book, so really looking forward to seeing when that comes out. And we do always ask our guests, you have gone through some of them already, what your top tips are for our listeners to empower themselves. Do you want to wrap some of those up for us now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I can do it through two lenses. One is as an individual and one as an organization. So I'll do it through those two lenses. Top tip for an individual, be curious. Spark that curiosity that you had as a 5-year-old. If you're not asking why, if you're not kind of looking at exploring this stuff, then you're missing out on some really great upside and some really great potential for you as an individual, you for your career growth, all these kinds of things, but also just personally dealing with the overwhelm of work and all the stuff that's, the complexity of work and things like that. So, be curious and start using the tools that are available on the market and do it in a safe way. Don't be dumb in terms of putting all your corporate secrets into online stuff that you don't trust and things like that. But I think I know for your audience of this podcast, they understand that already. So we don't need to reiterate that too much. But yeah, that curiosity and trying things and learning through experimentation, I think that's the number one tip. I think for organizations, you need to create the context for people to be able to do that. And that is not just about delivering the tools. So I think if you're an organization, if you're not thinking about a generative AI tool that you can roll out across your organization, you will need to be doing that pretty shortly, because that's just like electricity, just like Excel, just like other tools in the workplace. It'll be expected, if not expected already. And it'll be an amplifier of your people. So I think you need to be thinking that. But it's not just the tool. It's about creating the space for people to explore and creating the space for people to experiment and the space for people to be curious, which may mean you need to restructure your work and not just keep throwing work at people, but maybe take some work away from people. Maybe take some meetings away from people so they have the time to actually think, explore, synthesize, committed memory, think about all the potential opportunities that there are there. That will definitely benefit the organization longer term.
I want to reiterate
a short-term dip to get that longer-term upside. So.
I want to reiterate something that you said there. Remove meetings from people's diaries to be able to facilitate, right? That's the thing that I think we often see is forgotten. We give them something to do, but we don't take away something so that they can do it effectively.
My favourite story from COVID, if we think back, COVID seems like forever ago now, but we're helping organisations transition to remote work and hybrid work. And I use Microsoft as an example. This is public knowledge, so I'm not sharing anything that's secret. But the way that Microsoft were measuring their success during COVID was how many meetings people were having on Teams. And I used to always say to people at Microsoft, that is the dumbest metric you can possibly have, because who wants more meetings? We want to have fewer meetings, but more impactful meetings, more meaningful meetings that actually help us get work done. So thankfully they changed that metric over time. But that short-sightedness of just trying to fill up the day with more stuff, it might feel like you're getting a short-term burst of productivity or outcome, but longer term, it's going to burn out people. People are going to leave. Turnover and tension is going to be through the roof. People will hate their work. They won't bring that discretionary energy that you want them to bring to their work day to day. Some carving out or pruning of the way that your workday happens is definitely a high impact way to change the game.
Yeah, pruning. I like that. It is so lovely to talk to you, Paul. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening today. Do keep in mind that this is a podcast for informational purposes, and all we're really doing is sharing our opinions on things that matter to us. With that being said, if you liked what you heard and want to continue supporting us, share this podcast with your network to help us grow and bring on even more guests. Until next time, this is Ajari from EmpowerTech, signing off.